Welcome to Vida Tennis, the podcast for those of us who eat, sleep, breathe tennis. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Meike Babel. She's a former top-ranked professional tennis player, having achieved a ranking of 27 in singles and 45 in doubles during her impressive 10-year career in the WTA. She played in 19 Grand Slams and represented Germany in Fed Cup. After retiring from her playing career, she went on to coach at Tulane and Vanderbilt University. She's not just an incredible athlete, she also got a degree in human and organizational development from Vanderbilt and received further training from Duke University, integrative medicine to assist clients in behavior modification. And she's also a mental toughness specialist certified by Dr. Jim Lehre's Human Performance Institute. She lives in Colorado and works as a mental skills coach with the women's tennis team at Vanderbilt, as well as individual athletes from different sports. And she serves as a USTA Regional Training Center mental skills coach. Did I get all of that right, Mikey? Welcome to Vida Tennis.
Yep, you got everything right.
Okay, perfect. Just want to make sure, because sometimes, you find some stuff and then you're like, oh, I don't do that anymore. So, Mikey, we want to learn about you. Obviously, you had an incredible playing career, but we want to learn more about the coaching side. Was coaching always your plan B, or how did that come about? How did you get into coaching?
It wasn't really a plan B, to be honest. So while I was playing, I couldn't go to school, very obviously, but I did get back then it was correspondence courses, my high school diploma to be able to go to college or university. And I did that here in the US because in Germany, it's, you can go to university, of course, but there's no collegiate athletics.
Right.
And I wanted to stay connected with tennis in some way. And getting to be the assistant coach somewhere was a way to stay in tennis and also get my education paid for. So that was the deal. And I really fell in love with coaching because I felt I had a really good connection really quickly with players on our team who I think had never been really coached by another female. So that was definitely one of the big pluses right away. And then I just, as I said, I fell in love and here I am 20 years later.
Yeah. So you went with the intention of getting a degree and studying human development. And then you kind of figured out, oh, this is something that I like to do, is coaching.
Yeah. I mean, at Tulane, they didn't have that major. So I was on business track or whatever it was. But then I did transfer to Vanderbilt. And that was, human and organizational development, which is leading people, figuring out what their strengths are, where their roles, where their peak could be in roles. That's the whole premise basically of that major. And I felt like, well, that's what you're doing in coaching. And then it was just, to me, it was then the logical thing because I don't necessarily see myself sitting in an office with business clothes on and all that kind of stuff. So being on the court was always important for me.
Yeah. And so what do you like most about coaching? And how was that transition actually from player to coach?
I think the biggest reward was always that aha moment when somebody worked on something. And I know that from my own career, you work on so many things. And then when it works, right, that's when you go like, okay, this is why I'm spending hours and hours on the court. This is why I'm spending hours and hours in the gym or whatever else we do. And when somebody then gets that and you were the facilitator, right, you open another door for them, something that they may have not trusted themselves to do or hadn't worked on before. And then they do it in a match and you get this, wow, okay, this is really cool. I mean, when you're sitting on the bench and you see somebody trying to do it, even if it doesn't work in the beginning, but then at some point the work pays off. I think that is still the most rewarding thing as a coach for me.
I would have to say that for me too, when you're coaching and you get to see that you've helped this person one way or another. I mean, that's what we're there to do. So that's always really, really rewarding. And how was it to go from playing at the highest level to coaching? And obviously you were coaching college, but were you on the side also working maybe with other different levels?
Well, in the beginning, not so much, because I was also going to school at the same time as I was coaching. So it was very, very full time. But since then, of course, I transitioned actually away from high performance coaching, to be honest, because it's just too involved. It's too many hours. There's parents involved, which I'm sure we'll get to at some point. But it really was the understanding at some point that it doesn't matter what level I'm coaching, we all struggle with the same things. And that's almost a little bit more the technical part, to be honest, in tennis to me is the easiest part, because that's repetitions. But being able to do the higher percentage thing or the smart thing, the new thing under pressure, that's kind of what I think the decisive factor then is, whether you're, whatever your level is, you're successful and you're not successful necessarily as much. And that understanding that it doesn't matter whether I'm playing at a Grand Slam or I'm playing, I don't know, in your club championship. We might get nervous or frustrated or something's not working. We have to problem solve. Doesn't matter. I think that was the biggest takeaway actually for me, that, yeah, that's great that I played wherever the heck I played. We deal with the same issues.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a different level of commitment, right? From like a high level player to a recreational player. And I think if you're used to being around high performance, it can be a little bit of a shock to the system to now be working with players that are maybe not as committed, not as serious about it, but they do want to learn a little bit and maybe figure out the shortcuts, not that there's really too many, right? But what would you say are the main differences between working with recreational players now from when you were coaching at a higher level?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the level of involvedness, but it differs. You know, I'm mostly now teaching adults because I know when they show up, they want to be there.
Yeah.
They know what the worth is that they're paying for, and it's not glorified babysitting. I really, really figured that out really quickly, that sometimes even in high performance coaching, it's not the kid that wants to be there. It's the parent that wants the kid to be there. And to me, that's the most difficult lesson to teach, because you're not getting them at a most fundamental level. You know, they're there and they're going through the motions, and that can be at a really, really high level. So I'd rather have somebody who is not as good of a player. I don't care. If they're trying, if they're working on it, whatever, with the limited time they have, because they then also value the time when they're on court a lot more. And I'm sure you've heard that a lot of times when somebody comes stressed from their job or something, it's like the court is their fun time, right? Their relaxed time, their release from whatever it is. And I'd much rather teach people like that than the high performance that are not really, really engaged, because I've learned that is very few people, very few kids really.
Yeah, it's true.
Want to be there.
And when I first started coaching, maybe even my first 5, maybe even more years, I think that I just naturally felt more comfortable around kids and high performance. As long as people were younger than me, I think it was easier for me to communicate. I just felt more comfortable, I guess. It took me a while actually to get comfortable teaching adults, the ladies especially. It can be a little bit tough at the beginning, at least, until they get to know you and they get to really like trust you as a coach, right? Did you experience any of that when you first came in?
I still have people that, let's put it this way, I don't think I'm very intimidated by anyone, because I am in a very, very privileged position that if somebody doesn't like my coaching style, I don't need to take their lesson. So I'm very, very different in that. I was not at the beginning of my career. I am now, we're at a middle school, rudimentary setting, shall I say. And the people that like how I coach, what I coach, they're coming. But if somebody is maybe a little off-put by my very direct coaching, I'm German after all, pretty blunt, then I don't have to, they don't come back, and I'm perfectly fine with that. But of course, in the very beginning, you had to find your way a little bit at college, it was different because there was, of course, a little bit the inbuilt respect, hopefully, that the players had and the respect that we had for the players. And you kind of got to know each other very quickly because you also spent, when you had a freshman, you spent 4 years with them together. But then, yes, you do come into a club setting. And that's also why I don't want to be in a country club setting, to be perfectly honest, because you can be very direct and you have to provide a different service there.
Yeah.
It's more about, and honestly, I don't know what it's all about at a country club, but it felt immediately not like something that I necessarily want to do because I have to modify how I coach.
Yeah.
Because it's not, it's just not geared towards the things that I want to give somebody. Mm-hmm. And it's more about, I don't know what it's about at a country club. I don't know, but I do feel that I gel better with certain people that are okay with my coaching style. It's a little bit more bland. I don't necessarily want to call somebody by their last name, all the kind of regulations that you have. And yes, I am a service provider, but I'm the expert. And if you come to my court, you do want to recognize that. And so that's, I think, how I want to operate. And I'm not necessarily 100% sure if that's always the case in the settings that I have chosen to decline. Let's put it this way.
I totally know what you're talking about. I mean, I'm in country clubs. So
Yeah.
I absolutely know what you are referring to. It is a little bit different. I think you would do well. I think you would be just fine. I think I love the fact that you're okay with the fact that you just have to be yourself and authentic to your personality. And I always tell people too, like, you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. Like, you're going to find your people wherever you go, whether it's a country club, a public facility, whether you're doing your own thing, people are going to find you. And, you know, the people that like, you're going to stay, and the people that don't, they're going to move on to someone that it's a better fit for them. And it's okay. You don't have to be it for everybody. Right.
Agree.
So do you still get to spend a lot of time on court?
I am very consciously rolling it down. And actually, we're making one huge change. We're actually going to move to Spain in a month.
Oh, wow.
Because I've been on court for, I didn't even want to add the hours up that I was on court when I played, but 30, 35, 40 hours of teaching since I got into coaching.
Yeah.
And at some point, it's physically, I can't do it anymore. I mean, here in Colorado, it's like 120 degrees in the summer on the court. I mean, you're in Florida, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So with the humidity there, I don't know how you guys do that, but it's the heat here. And I can't do 30 hours anymore. Yeah. And very, again, knock on wood, very, very happy that my online stuff, my YouTube, my membership form, and all that has taken off the way it has, so that I can actually really get off the court a lot. I'll probably be teaching a little bit, but that's just really more for funsies and really people that I can pick and choose.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not on court a lot anymore. I mean, right now, especially with the weather, we had our first snow, and in the winter, it's a little tougher here, but maybe I'm out like 5 hours a week right now.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. That's really interesting. And that's so smart that you're finding other ways to bring in money. As a coach, it can be brutal. And I mean, we always get asked why there are not enough women in playing tennis. And, that's coaching tennis. And that's a big can of worms, but I think physicality.
Do we want to go there?
Yeah, no, we don't necessarily want to go there, but but honestly, like, I think that does kind of play a factor. I mean, I particularly don't want to be on court 10 hours a day. Like, that's my life in the summer. And I do it because it has a beginning and it has an end. It's 3 months. And I actually go to the Northeast. So I don't stay in the Florida heat. So that's a lot better, because I don't know how people coach in Florida in the summer. To be honest. It's brutal. But yeah, I mean, we just got to find new ways to advance in our coaching career so that we're not taking the toll on our body all the time. So how is that going for you? What's the online coaching space look like? Because I'm not too familiar with that. Is that profitable for you? Like, how does that work out for you?
Yeah, so I got into it, to be perfectly honest, during the pandemic, and players reached out to me. It's like, hey, there's, especially then when we came out of lockdown a little bit, but playing opportunities were still very rare because you had, like, I don't know what the regulations were where you were, but at first it was just family members can hit with one another. And then you could only have 4 people or even 2 people. I can't even remember. It was somewhat difficult. And people were asking, what are some things that we can do? So I actually did some, putting practice plans, schedules together for people a little bit so that they could hit with one another. And I looked around a little bit. I mean, I watched a lot of YouTube, and I did notice that there is not a one female coach on YouTube. I mean, it's all guys. And I do know that we do coach differently. And I found some of their coaching, to be perfectly honest, really problematic because, number one, it only came from a space like, hey, I was this great player and now a 3-0, 3-5 player is watching. Dude, they can't do what you can do. I can't do anymore what you were able to do. I can't do what I used to be able to do. I got gray hair. I can't do that. I'm close to 50. So you also have to communicate a little bit differently, I think, to different levels, different understanding, different clienteles. And as blunt as I am, I do think that I'm pretty good at that. So that was the first step. And clients were like, well, why don't you do that? I was like, well, okay, why don't I do that?
Yeah.
Of course, I had to learn a whole lot. You have to get really comfortable speaking in front of the camera. You have to figure out equipment. How do I film myself? And then I do really, really like to teach myself things. So I had zero idea how to do editing. Like, how do I edit? So if I now look at my first videos, I'm going like, oh my God, that is so terrible. But you learn. And then the other branch that really quickly, I think, developed is absolutely the mental skills coaching, because we all got so comfortable with Zoom and being online. So now you have literally the whole world open to you. And whereas I did that a lot also before the pandemic, but it was really local. So somebody had to be in Denver, and you have the time constraints, and they have to travel to you, or I have to meet them somewhere. And that really was a pain in the neck. And all of a sudden, everybody is very comfortable with that. And so that really took off. And yeah, online coaching with stroke analyses, with match analyses, those are all things, I think, now that literally everybody has the opportunity to film themselves and it's so easy to get footage. I think it's something that's really, really valuable. And I think it's very, I don't want to call it easy, because you do have to understand biomechanics to a certain degree, and you have to understand that what I think is really important, what is fundamental, what is style. So you're not screwing people up, basically, because I do get footage from people that I've never seen before in my life. I don't see what they look like in matches. I just see the stroke. So obviously I want to be very careful that I'm not all of a sudden like, your grip is totally wrong. And this is total, whatever you do. This, no, totally wrong. So there was a learning curve. Absolutely. But it's something that I do like. I just do like learning and figuring out new things. So I'm really pleased with how it's developed. And I'm really happy that I can now do it from wherever I am in the world, basically.
Yeah, no, I love that. And there's a good number, I think, of coaches that are doing that, filming themselves or doing like the video analysis stuff. But I think a lot of times coaches maybe are a little bit shy in front of the camera, or I mean, at least I know I am. Like for me, doing a podcast is very different because it's audio.
Yeah.
But like, doing a video, especially if it's like a live video, I think that would be really intimidating. I'm more comfortable. I'm getting better at it now, but how did you work through that? I mean, you were probably more used to being in front of a camera than the average coach, no?
Not really. I mean, when I played, there was no social media. Like back in the day when you got footage, you literally had to have like a camera, like basically that's the size of like a movie camera now. I mean, it was so difficult to film yourself and expensive.
Right.
Now at every single tournament, even like go to the ITF website and you can stream, like every single match is streamed basically. And players get media training and the sponsors demand that you have a media presence or a social media presence. And so I think the upcoming generations are so much more comfortable. I had to learn it. And I think that is when my good old major came into kind of helping public speaking. What do you do when you're nervous? What are some helpers that you're not forgetting everything? And of course, I would almost say learn how to edit before you learn getting comfortable on the camera because you can just edit out so much stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, as I said, I mean, my first videos, I'm going to think, what the heck? But the beauty is you can do them over and it's all good. I mean, and it's not necessarily for everybody, but yeah, I've got comfortable. You have to work on it just like on every other thing, new skill.
Of course. And would you say, is it about 50-50, like where you get video analysis, technical stuff, or is it, 50-50 meaning the mental stuff and the technique stuff, or is it more technical stuff? Like what's the demand in your demographic?
I would say it's about half. And it's a lot of times it's players where I know other coaches go like, well, they don't need mental skills. They need to work on all their other stuff first. And it's like, thoroughly disagree there.
Yeah.
And it's players. I'm working with 3.0, 3.5 players. I work a lot with juniors who start competing or have been competing for the first time. And now their mental stuff starts to catch up with them because yes, we obviously teach them tactics and technical stuff and getting the ball in play first. And now they're competing. So I would say it's about a good even mix.
Okay. And how important is teaching proper technique to you? And at what age do you think that should be the emphasis? Or I guess not necessarily age, but stage?
I'm a big fan of going with the proper technique right away.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the big advantage I had. My dad saw to it, and the coaches that I had in my club, that I had good technique before anything, because you can manipulate everything else so much, to my mind, and through my own experience, so much easier, and things will catch up with you. Technical flaws will catch up with you later. And then when you're already set, to change them. And now you're in a competitive environment. If we talk, for instance, about, and it doesn't matter, it could be club players. It's very, very difficult to change habits that they've had for years and years and years. I mean, we all know the struggle that players have. I'm just making this up, but this is a very normal thing for me to encounter. A 3-5 player, let's say, who's been playing for 20 years, and they have the pancake grip.
Oh yeah.
They're almost, neither are they willing, nor do they have the time, potentially not the money, to spend to make that technical change. And so it's always a fine line to walk. Am I going to enable them to play right away and let them get away with bad technique? And then it kind of, where do you want to top out? Do you just want to play socially? Do you want to hit around with your family? So I think I've gotten a little bit more relaxed about that. But if I do have somebody fairly committed, we're going to technique.
Yeah.
And then of course we're working on that in conjunction with tactical things. But that was the big thing. I had great technique. Took me a lot longer to develop that, but that at the end then was the thing that allowed me to leapfrog every single person that beat me when I was 14 or 15 or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's really interesting because adults tend to kind of stick with whatever works at first and not too willing to change, especially grips. I'm huge on grips, by the way.
Yeah.
And so if you get a video analysis, let's say, and requests, and right away you're like, okay, she's hitting her volleys with a semi-Western grip.
Yeah.
That's something that you, because like, where do you start? Once you change the grip, like the whole swing, the whole way you hit the ball changes, right?
Agreed. Yeah.
So do you tell them all that, or do you start just with, okay, I think the first thing you need to do is change your grip? Like how would you approach that?
I do point out, obviously, that it's the wrong grip. And then I do that in private lessons here as well. I mean, I give my clients the option, and a lot of players say like, dude, really, I'm playing for fun, or even if I'm playing league matches or something, I know that it's not the right grip and I don't have the time, effort, whatever. My tennis is more social. I want to be with my buddies, with my pals and whatnot. So how much can I still improve even with this wrong grip? So I approach it that way, the same way. In an analysis, I would say like, this is probably, or not probably, this is not the right grip. Here's what you can still do with this. I don't necessarily, what I always stress is, and I obviously communicate via email or sometimes on the phone, if you're interested in changing that grip, do you have a coach that you can make that change with? And a lot of times they either say like, yeah, I understand. I know my coach has been on me on this for years or something, but I just wanted to see what else I can do with this grip. Or so we get into a conversation. I'm not necessarily immediately saying, this is a wrong grip. You suck. You can't do it. Go away.
That would be great.
Well, that would be very, very German, but it's like, wow, you don't suck as bad as I thought you would. That's a German compliment.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I think I would make it in Germany.
And we're still, I mean, yeah, this was very interesting in my first couple of years in college. Yeah. And since I've really, really reframed. And of course, people who know me better, I can jokingly say like, wow, that wasn't as horrible today as I thought, or whatever. But yeah, I would say that. And of course, other cultures would get, either taken aback or offended. And I had to learn first that, that's not praise. In Germany, it was more or less, at least for me, and potentially still my generation, I don't know how, maybe that has changed a little bit. But if the coach didn't pick on you and didn't yell at you and didn't like point like horrible stuff out to you, that was good practice. Yeah. So if your coach didn't pick on you, you were fine. So I had to change that, especially with Americans. If I didn't say anything to them, they were like, oh my God, I must have been terrible today. It's like, no, that's you did great today. Let me focus on, So that was also interesting.
That's good adaptability. It's the cultural differences and are huge. I mean, I'm from Venezuela, so I came to play college tennis. That's how I first came to the US.
Yeah.
And I remember like we had some teammates from Slovakia and they were kind of like that, like very direct, no BS. And they're not trying to hurt your feelings, but they're also not trying to protect your feelings.
Correct.
And at first it was like, oh my gosh. And then I kind of understood them and the intention behind what they were saying, but it did take me a second there to really get used to that.
And people still, that's what I tell people. Most players that join my drills it's word of mouth, like people refer them. And I always ask them kind of jokingly, did so-and-so warn you? Because my coaching might be a little more R-rated. Are the occasional cuss words flying on the court, which obviously I could have not done in a country club.
Right. That you're right about, for sure.
Yes. And the weird thing is like one of my college players then said like, you are the most positive coach I ever had in the most bizarre and blunt way. And I didn't know how to take that in the beginning when she said like, you've never said anything negative personally to me, which a lot of coaches did, so that I felt when I did something wrong that I also was a bad person, because that's a touchy line sometimes. Yeah. But the way that you said it was always so weirdly blunt. And so she basically ended up, you're a really great coach, but really, really weird. I'm like, wow, okay. Don't know how to take that, but I take it as a compliment.
There you go. Yeah, I think people just, once they get to know you, I think they totally get it. But you've been coaching for a while. You've seen coaches in person. You've studied the online space, obviously, because that's where you are now for the most part. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that you see in coaches, right? When teaching technique, or is there anything that kind of comes to mind that you're just
Oh,
like,
good God,
oh,
yes.
geez.
Please stay away from referring to a bigger backswing as the WTA forehand. Please stay away from that.
I've heard that, yes.
Oh, good God. And they say you have to have the ATP forehand. And that's like, no, it's from a biomechanics standpoint. I mean, I'm always referring to Dr. Mark Kovacs, who has, I think, soundly disproven that it's just wrong. It's wrong. It's sexist. It's uneducated. If anybody feels offended by this, I really don't care. I'm a woman who has been coached by males exclusively, and the stuff that they try to push on us as females because men do it has been astounding. So I sometimes really joke with peers that I'm now in touch with that we even made it that far was stunning with the way that we were coached.
Yeah.
And I still see that all the time with that stupid forehand. I always am so tempted when coaches who are so for this are showing that on social media, how they're basically forcing a young boy or a girl into a certain swing shape. And guess what? You never hear anything from those kids anymore in 1 or 2, 3 years, because they will not be successful with that. Let them do whatever. I mean, it would be, so one of the things that reminds me of was Steffi Graf's forehand, right? I mean, our generation immediately knows what it looks like. The younger kids, they have no idea what that looks like. The German Federation then basically tried to teach every single girl that forehand. And in the process, ruined tons of forehands. Because Stephanie, sorry, she wants to be called Stephanie. So Stephanie Graf, with her athletic ability, with her footwork, with her levers, with her, I can't hit that forehand that way.
Yeah.
Nor can some of my friends that were actually, and that was one of the beautiful things about me developing a little later. I was not necessarily as involved with the German Federation at the time because I was just not as good yet. But I do have 2 friends who had their forehands completely ruined because of that, because they were pushed into that form over and over and over, and basically were not allowed to develop their own swing. On the men's side, on the boys' side, Boris Becker with his serve. I mean, his ability to load and that knee dip that he had, how low, do that with 12, 13, 14-year-old boys that are in puberty, like their limbs are all over the place. I mean, we're talking about trying to push a young boy or a young female then as well, while they were still growing, into a serving form that a fully grown male is exhibiting.
Yeah.
That is, to my mind, that's just stunning and dumb. But we try, a lot of times we do that. And it's like, or coaches still propagate that. And it's like, you can't you can't have a 10-year-old sprint the same way as Usain Bolt does. You can look at the fundamentals and try to work towards that, but you do have to take into account their age, their strength, flexibility, mobility, whatever the things are. So if we bring that to a more modern day, do we now teach everybody Daniil Medvedev's forehand? That's a really great forehand.
Yeah.
But it's his unique flavor. But that would be the same logic, right? He's got a great forehand. Are we now teaching everybody the Daniil Medvedev forehand? No.
Yeah.
Right? Let people develop within the fundamentals, whatever it looks like. That's style. And that's that whole debate. What is style? What is fundamentals? And obviously this coming from a female will always be taken immediately with, a lot of negativity. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah, I definitely have seen that. From my perspective, the one I've seen the most is the Rafa Nadal forehand being forced onto players that don't have that. I mean, I get it. Like maybe you're trying to create a little bit more top spin or whatever it is, but I do see that a lot is like trying to get them to emulate the Rafa forehand. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh my gosh, like that's so unnatural to me. Like, especially with a Western grip, like I can even hit a ball with a Western grip, let alone
Yeah,
like
no.
it that way. So yeah, I definitely understand what you're talking about. And I agree. I mean, I've seen that time and time again. And sometimes the players themselves too want to break down how their favorite player plays and then they want to do it
Yeah.
exactly like that. And it might be the most unnatural thing for their
Yes.
body, what they
Yes. Yeah.
do. So that's really good advice. And then what about on the mental side? So I did want to ask you, what does mental toughness mean to you? And is that something that can actually be improved?
So number one, that mental toughness things like goes back a little bit to when I played, but the one and only reason why I got into that was because I was not ready to compete at the level that I ended up competing because yeah, back then sports psychology was not a thing. And or if it was available, people would immediately deduce that something is wrong with you because you're, and I'm making air quotations, because you're seeing a psychologist. So the mental toughness, I do like the mental skills better as a quote unquote title
I think the
because
terminology.
yeah, just
Okay.
just to start with, because if somebody says, well, you're not mentally tough, the contrary then would be you're mentally weak, which is not the case. It's just like we're not prepared to deal with certain things in the way that we should be, I think. So being mentally tough, if we use that term, is to stay productive when things go against you. And I don't say positive because I don't necessarily think you need to be super positive to still make good choices on the court. And that is the productiveness is basically seeing what needs to be done, seeing what do I have at my disposal, what can I do right now, and then doing it. To me, that's what mental toughness is. So if we, Iga Swiatek talks about that a lot, and I love that she said, I was able to solve problems because that's what it is on court. I mean, it's not about the forehand or the backhand, but is it about the forehand? Can she accelerate the exact same way, go for whatever target she's choosing to when it's 5-all in the third set tiebreaker, as opposed to being up 5-1, 40-love in the first set? My mom can do that, right? Everybody can do that because there's no pressure. So being realistic, I think, is also one thing. What can I do right now? Acknowledging that, yes, I'm scared, I'm angry, I'm negative, and finding ways to get out of that within a very, very short amount of time. That to me is mental toughness. And can it be improved? Yes. Yes. That's why I work with people. It's just like any other skill. And I think a little bit still the misunderstanding that you can improve that. I mean, when I played, it was literally coaches told me in the face, you're just too negative, you'll never learn. I was like, oh, great, that's helpful. And on the flip side, people were like, Mike, you just have to stay positive. I'm like, yeah, I know that. Really? How? Give me the how. And that is what was missing. So I'm hoping that I can provide. And it's just things that you work on day to day to day, just like your forehand, your backhand. That's how your brain works. That's why I like that you mentioned. I mean, I'm not obviously a brain surgeon, but in my trainings, you do learn how your brain deals with or adjusts to behavior modification, what you need to put in place to actually cement those changes and make them natural and habitual or automatic, if you want to call it that. And I think that's still the biggest misconception, that you talk to a psychologist once and then, and I'm not a psychologist, I can't call myself psychologist because I don't have a PhD, and then you're fixed. That's not how it works. It's like you have to put in the exact amount of time that you also put in for your tactical, technical, athletic development. And I think more and more athletes get that. I mean, look at Iga Swiatek. She's traveling with a sports psychologist, and I don't know what they do day to day to day, but I bet that they spend a lot of time together and not just talk. They do exercises. They work on it, just like forehands and backhands.
Yeah. I love what you just said. And I think tennis players tend to be really tough on themselves, but more on the negative side, because maybe because it's an individual sport. I don't really know, but I do believe that grittiness, right? That ability to stay with it, even though maybe you're not succeeding, right? And figuring it out. I do think that optimism has a lot to do with that. Trying to stay positive, I think I really do think is probably the most important thing. And I don't know if we can go a little bit deeper into that, because you kind of said at the beginning that it wasn't just about that, but then you kind of said that it was really important, but that you actually struggle with that you were a very negative person. Have you figured that out? How can someone be more optimistic in their tennis, or I guess in life?
And the weird thing is, or not the weird thing is, I do tell the people that I work with that all the skills that you're learning, you can use in life. I mean, whether you go into a job interview or you have a very heated discussion with a loved one. I mean, we all know how that feels. We're nervous, we're angry, we're emotionally charged. So I think it also has a lot to do when you say like the positive, the optimism. I think if you can detach the outcome from your sense of self. I think a lot of when we played, and now I have talked to a lot of my peers that I never really talked to when we were all playing, because we're also wrapped up in our own stuff. Who was the bravest of trying something, and then if it didn't work, not literally have the outcome of, oh, I must be a bad person? Because we're so that the identity of an athlete is so wrapped up in the outcome of what they do. And you hear that. I mean, now that I'm reading more, and there is, of course, more access to players in terms of what they say. And you look at the Netflix series there when Paula Badosa talked about her mental health. It theoretically shouldn't make any sense that if we lose a match, we think we're a bad person, but that is a lot of what we think. And it doesn't matter. Disappointment, and you second guess everything. You question, are you made for this? Can I succeed in this? If you look at lower level players, am I going to have enough money to travel to the next tournament? And what else am I going to do? I'm just a tennis player. I know I struggle with that. I only know tennis. And luckily I was able to make a career after it out of that. But a lot of the players that I talked to, we all struggle with that. The identity is, I'm a tennis player. That's what I do. And I must be a bad tennis player or a bad person if I lose, because, if I lose, I'm not good. So the optimism, I think, it's not necessarily, so I think let's go back to the positive thing. I think you don't have to smile on court. You don't have to laugh. That's a lot of times what my coaches said, like, oh, laugh a little bit more on court. Like,
have fun.
Have fun. It's like, okay, I just double faulted 15 times in a row.
Is that fun?
That is super fun. Yay. So I think the optimism, the optimism to feel that I have things at my disposal, that I have a say in what happens to me right now. I have tools. I can take my time. I can do deep breathing. I can reframe negative thoughts. I can go away from, I suck at tennis, to, oh, my forehand, I should be doing this on the next ball. Can I do that? Yes, I can. Okay, let's do it, regardless of the outcome. So I think that's what I mean a little bit more with staying positive. I think it has a lot to do with being kind to yourself. And I know that a lot of people always go, what do you mean kindness? It's like, it's self-kindness. It's like, I know what my self-talk was. I know what my internal talk was. And I kind of see your eyebrows going up, and you're kind of...
Oh yeah, we can all relate, no matter what level we play. I didn't play professional tennis.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. We all encounter it. Tennis is a brutal sport in that way, because guess what? You are going to experience loss and disappointment nonstop, unless you're Novak Djokovic and you're winning everything you play, right? You're not winning the tournament. Even if you make it to the finals, you still lost.
You lost at least one time.
Exactly. So every time you enter a tournament, the odds are in favor of you being a loser.
Correct.
Right? No matter how you look at it, I mean, most players are going to lose. There's only one winner every time. So I think that's one of the main challenges as a tennis player is just dealing with loss, dealing with disappointment, and it's so difficult.
And I think that's then the optimism comes from, or that would be ideally where we get into, is like saying, okay, I lost. What can I do differently? And we always talk about you learn more from losses than from wins. And that is so true. But do you allow yourself to actually really dissect just the tactical, the technical, maybe the athletic decisions, mental decisions that you made, without still having this global feeling of like, oh my God, that was horrible. And I just stay in that, because I remember that. It's painful to look at that.
Yeah.
Because you can't change anything anymore for the past. And I think that is one of the huge mental skills that very courageous, very kind, very, yes, successful athletes have, that they can say like, okay, that happened. That was horrible. That hurt. Here are the things that I can actually do. Move on. And I know that I wasn't very, very good at that, but I never had any help in that. So that's, I think, why it's so important to me that I'm doing, or why I got into this, because I do know, I felt hopeless, helpless, negative. I mean, you name it, any emotion that's negative.
Yeah, I mean, it's different generations, and now there's so much more information and resources, right? Yeah. What about mindfulness? Do you have certain, I call it mindfulness practices, but really any practice, whether it's meditation, yoga, ice bath, whatever, that you have that you like? Do you have any favorite ones that you would recommend?
Mindfulness. So a lot of the behavior modification is based on mindfulness, because you need to know what you are doing, feeling, thinking in the moment. And I think that is Novak Djokovic talked about that. And I think I'm naming those two because we know all that they work with mental skills.
Yeah.
Or LeBron James does it. If I go into other sports, Sue Bird talks about it. I mean, there's so many athletes. It is in the moment, recognizing what you're feeling, what you're thinking, and labeling it correctly. For instance, just as, oh, this is a negative thought. Okay. But you don't have to hang on to it. You don't have to dig into it. You can just say, okay, just lost a point, wasn't the smartest. What can I do now? Let's go. That is mindfulness on the court. And yes, I do it off court. And I always say, like, had somebody taught me that. And then, of course, the tools to use to, for instance, reframe negative thoughts, or how do I get myself from mind spinning, angry, whatever, to recognizing what it is. And then how can I get my heart rate down and my breathing under control again? Had somebody taught me that, I would not just have been 27 in the world, because I can go through my records, my playing records, and literally look at them. Yep, 2 minutes there, self-destruction, 3 minutes there. Yep, that kind of sucks. I mean, if you have to do that, and that's painful. If there was so much more that I could have done, but I didn't have the resources. You said resources, and I think that's a huge improvement from when you played. I mean, I'm thinking we're somewhat the same generation-ish.
Having that awareness, I think, is the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Then you can figure out what to do about it. But do you have any practice, like do you meditate, do you do yoga, any of those things?
I do yoga, but that's mostly really because I'm getting old and I need more flexibility again. And I do mindfulness, not necessarily in a very formal, I'm not necessarily sitting, but throughout the day, there's little things that you can do just to bring your awareness back to the moment, especially just little things when I feel I'm very unfocused, I'm not getting anything done. I can check in with myself, get back. I know it sounds very cheesy and esoteric, like get back into my body, check in. Okay, what are my 5 senses doing right now? And I think those are the little things that you can also do on the court. When I do work with players, I do try to get them into a quote unquote more formal and or consistent mindfulness.
I love that. And I think because maybe different generations, we grew up in a different environment. So now like to us, it seems cheesy now, but it's really not cheesy. There's a lot of truth and a lot of value to it. And obviously you see it, we all see it. And we have to just normalize that kind of language and that kind of coaching, because it makes such a difference. It makes such a difference. So yeah, don't say it's cheesy, because it's really, really not. Yeah. We have to own it and really like start communicating in that way and helping people, I think, become more aware, right?
Agree.
Of their own like self-hatred and like
Oh, good God, yeah.
going on in their head, We all go through it. I mean,
yeah.
I don't think anybody's safe from that.
No.
Who has been your favorite coach?
Very early on, actually, the first female that I had, because she was the first one to actually not talk down to me, just tell me what to do. She asked questions and tried to, and I don't know if she did that because I don't think she had formal training. We did talk about that at some point. I'm still in touch with her. That was just one, she wanted to know what I was thinking. So the questions that we're now asking, what were you trying to do with this shot? That was when she asked me that the very first time. I'm like, huh? What? I don't know. Just all of a sudden you start thinking about why you're hitting certain shots. And the unfortunate thing was she then got out of coaching, just like so many females, because she didn't want to travel, all that kind of stuff. But that would have been a game changer, I think, for me, because it was all, and we talked a lot about that, trying to draw a line between you as a tennis player and you as just a normal person, right? There are so many more qualities to you as a daughter, sister, friend, whatever else we are in our lives, that you can focus on that a little bit. And I think that did bring a lot more joy to tennis, because it wasn't all about tennis.
Yes. Yes. Oh, that's awesome. And then shoot, I didn't realize it's almost been an hour. So I got to ask you my last question. What has been the grand slam moment and the double bagel moment of your career? And it can be playing or coaching, whatever you want to share with us, but like the high and the low. And I know you've played in some literal grand slams. So, whatever you want to share.
The Grand Slam actually was not at a Grand Slam, although I did have a couple of really cool moments there. Clinching the last singles match for our club team to move up from second league into Bundesliga, into the highest league in Germany, at our home courts with my friends there, because we were a very tightly knit team, and being the last out to clinch or get us up to a 4-2 lead, which then we kind of figured out to win one more doubles fairly easily. I think that was definitely the biggest or proudest. I think I am, because that was everybody watching, a lot of things riding on it. And you do it for your teammates as well. So it was something that you could share. The bagel, definitely playing my last match, knowing that my shoulder is completely, I know I can't swear, but completely effed up. Yeah. That there's no coming back from that injury. And that I had to basically stop my career, not because I wanted to, but because my body didn't kind of cooperate anymore. So that was definitely the lowest.
Yeah. Is your shoulder still bothering you to this day?
I don't serve anymore, and I can hit, and that's great, but I can't compete anymore. So and I don't want to necessarily. So now I've made my peace with it, but not being able to finish your career on your terms, that sucked.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine. Yeah. I was talking to Milagro Sequeira, who was another professional tennis player. And she also had a lot of shoulder issues. I have shoulder issues. I think it's very common in female players. I think it's being overworked, doing too much. Yeah. No limits. That is really unfortunate. And have you figured out anything about your shoulder, like, or maybe how to prevent that from happening?
Yeah, I mean, if we were to talk about some of the issues that I have with still coaching, is that pushing the hips over the baseline on the serve, because that gets you in a hyper, like for me, it got me into a hyperangulation, and that puts a lot of stress on the shoulder. But we didn't know better. I mean, there were no biomechanic. You couldn't go onto like a power plate and see where you're loading and all the things that they do now. Or some people have access to, not everybody. So it definitely was an overuse, but also a slightly technical flaw that we just didn't know better about.
Yeah.
back then. So it's the one thing where I wish the knowledge would have been better, but that it also came a little, see how Becker dips and how he rotates and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, but he also has like, remember he had like thighs like this, and I'm making like, so yeah, to make it short, that was the one thing. So I know that if I were to train somebody now from like start to finish, again, now we know what the technical things should be. Back then, that was the knowledge.
Right.
Everybody thought I had great technique on the serve, but unfortunately, it was not the healthiest thing.
That's really too bad. And then how can people find you? You're still going to be offering online coaching? Yeah. Okay. Just tell us your website, like where people can find you, reach out to you.
It's MikeBabel.com. And you can find me on YouTube, Meike Babel Coaching or Tennis Coaching, I think it is. Just YouTube it in the search bar. You can find me there. Instagram, I think it's also Meike Babel. Yeah, there's only one Meike Babel, I think.
Yeah, you do have a lot of videos, a lot of info out there. I'll put your website in the show notes and all that so people can just click on there if they want to.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Meike. It was awesome talking to you. Learned a lot, and all the best with your move to Spain. I'm jealous.
Yeah, it's yay. One more month.
Oh, for 4 months. Okay, well.
No. 1 more month and then we go. And it's perfect.
But you're moving for good.
Yeah. We're out of here.
All right. Thank you so much, Meike.
All right. You're welcome.